Hey everybody, my name's Tim. This is my video submission for this week's subject, professional counseling skills. I'm going to try and keep it into the 4-minute window. We'll see what happens. I tend to overtalk, so let's stop wasting time and get right into it. Question number 1. Are the sessions you watched similar to what you imagined a counseling session to be? Why or why not? In Chapter 9, we watched videos of Dr. Michael and Mariah's interaction, as well as Wayne Powell and Stephanie's interaction. And those were two totally different counseling styles. And I actually have never experienced receiving a counseling session in the way Dr. Michael's approach was. And I'll get into that more into the second question. But to finish the first question, I have experienced the counselor that Wayne Powell is, and I have not experienced the counselor that Dr. Michael is, and so that was a bit illuminating to watch him interact with Mariah. Question number 2. From your readings in Chapter 8 and 9, what skills and counselor characteristics did you notice? Did you notice any demonstration of theoretical orientation? Yes. In Chapter 9, the textbook talks about the models of what are the counseling skill development models. There's 3 that are discussed: the Ivy model, the COUC500 model, and the Eagan model. Dr. Michael's is the Eagan model. So what this means, well, I'll just quote from the textbook. The textbook says the Eagan model is a 3-stage model for client intervention that responds to the following questions: what is going on? What do I need and want? How do I get what I need and want? And so Dr. Michael's really focused in on Mariah's words about, her experience on her previous date where she didn't speak up for herself. And so as a result, she felt disconnected with her date and obviously frustrated. This is a perpetual thing for Mariah, not really feeling super attracted or connected to her dates that she goes on. And so Dr. Michael, using the Eagan model, took her story, offered a new perspective, introduced new possibilities to change the agenda, made her stick to a commitment of 2 things she would do during the week to make her speak for herself and be more outgoing and give people the opportunity to respond to her. And so he left her with an action plan. And so I thought that was very Eagan modeled approach, like a very problem-solving orientation versus this kind of investigative thing we saw with Wayne Powell. Speaking to Wayne Powell's approach, I think that his orientation reflects the Ivy model a bit more. So to quote from Simmons and Kuhnley, the Ivy model is counselors develop their counseling skills on the groundwork of ethics, multicultural competence, neuroscience, and resilience. From there, counselors use basic skills of attending and empathy, observation of body language and facial expression, questioning, encouraging, paraphrasing, and reflecting. Wayne Powell did a great job at attaching to a word that Stephanie would use during their work. And in Chapter 9 of Simmons and Kuhnley, they talk about that strategy, attaching to a word that the client uses to use that as an anchor point to dig in more. How are you feeling about when you say the word frustrated? Tell me more about that. So that strategy right there is using the questioning and the paraphrasing to get into what is the thinking logic of the client. I also noticed that Wayne Powell used Stephanie's body language as a way to get into what her thinking is. At a time, he told her, "I noticed you took a sigh when you said what you said. Tell me more about what you're feeling." So we have the side of him investigating the thoughts, and we have the other side of Wayne Powell investigating the feelings of the client. So I didn't really see that in Dr. Michael's approach. Again, I think he's using an Eagan model, very structured, and I think that the Ivy model is discussed in Chapter 9 as this hierarchy. So we're kind of building the blocks between thoughts and feelings to help the client practice their own integration of these skills that we're teaching them. Think about your thoughts, think about your feelings. And so to answer question 3, which of the counselors would be a good fit for me? Wayne Powell would be a good fit for me. I like encouraging the client. I come from a behavioral therapy perspective with ABA. So I like shaping behaviors. I like encouraging people, positive reinforcement. These themes are central to what I do on a daily basis. So when I see parallels of that in counseling, that's kind of where I land as far as what I think works and has a good effect. And I like that Stephanie also was an agent of her own realization. Oh, this is how I think. This is how I feel. Whereas Mariah, and not to discount Dr. Michael's approach, but it's different in that Mariah was submissive to Dr. Michael's instruction. He left her with a plan. And Stephanie kind of was brought to her own realization through Wayne Powell's investigative questioning this is how I think. This is how I feel. And so that's two different things. And so I like that Wayne Powell approach more because I feel it gives the client more agency over realizing what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. I'm in control of that. I don't necessarily require someone to be prescribing me a treatment. I don't know. That's my impression. I also wanted to talk about this week, before I finish out with asking my question, since we're measuring these two different approaches between Dr. Michael's and Wayne Powell's approach, last week we talked about the integration model. And one of the challenges to counseling is that if we're not using the right approach with someone, they can become frustrated. We can be hitting conflicts of worldviews. This week, we talked about another element of frustration is dropout. And so Dropout, the textbook, I believe, said it's something like it takes 12 sessions for positive change to be realized with a client. So that was kind of interesting to me. And I went and did some research briefly, and I found a National Institute of Health article on their statistics about early withdrawal, so dropout from mental health treatment. This was done a couple years ago. And basically, they identified they call it an attrition problem, so premature termination of treatment. This is quoting from the article. Premature termination of treatment hinders the effective delivery of mental health services across various settings, populations, and modalities. And early studies of their attrition reported 50% dropout by session 3, with approximately 35% of patients ending therapy after a single session. That's really rough. In a review by this reporting firm, Bakeland and Lundwall, reports of dropout after the first session range from 20% to 57%, with others estimating early withdrawal from treatment at 47% across various counseling settings. So we have a dropout issue. Why are clients dropping out? Textbook talks about it. National Institute of Health talks about it. And we can experiment and hypothesize, why would a client drop out after the first session? Obviously we have the worldview difference, but we also have an approach difference. So if we're not being aware and cautious to our approach, it's possible. I'm not an expert. I don't know everything about this yet, but it's possible that our approach is turning people off. And so it's good to look at a Wayne Powell approach versus a Dr. Michael approach and be able to gauge, okay, what kind of person do I have in the room right now? Does this person need a more structured, assertive approach, or does this person need something more gentle, where they need to investigate their own thoughts and feelings? What am I going to get the client to do to investigate their own thinking? Or do they need more direction? So with that in mind, I want to jump to question 4, which is ask a question about the counseling session, the counselor, how skills are used, how theory is used. I want to tie this back into my week 3 challenge about the integration model. And I used a charge about depression. And if we have a suspicion in Dr. Wayne Powell's approach and versus Dr. Michael's approach, if we have a suspicion that the client is depressed, how do we handle that differently between Dr. Wayne and Dr. Michael's approach? If Dr. Michael is more pointed and assertive and goal-oriented and problem-solving driven, and Dr. Wayne or Wayne Powell is more, tell me more about that. Tell me how that's like for you. How would, if they are suspicious that the client is demonstrating depressive symptoms, how do you think that those counselors would handle a investigation into depression feelings differently? And if you have the answer to that, please leave it in the comments. Again, thank you for watching. I hope I didn't go too far over my time. And thank you so much for being part of the discussion.